All right, so today we're going to be diving into BlackRock's Q3 2024 earnings.
Yeah, their earnings reports always generate a lot of buzz, but this one I think is particularly interesting.
Yeah, no, you're right. This is not your average earnings report. We're
Yeah.
talking record inflows, assets under management, hitting a mind-blowing $11.5 trillion.
Yeah, you said trillion. I
Yeah.
think some people might have thought you meant billion.
Yeah, it's trillion with a T. We double-checked.
Oh.
And we've got the official earnings release. Of course, we've got this supplementary report with all the juicy details.
And we even have some interesting insights from Larry Fink himself.
We do. So we have a lot to unpack here. But I think the main takeaway is that it's not just about BlackRock's size at this point. It's really their growth that has everyone talking.
Right, because when you're already as big as BlackRock is, you don't really expect to see such impressive growth figures.
Exactly. We're talking 8% organic asset growth year on year. To put that into perspective, imagine a baby blue whale still packing on the pounds at that size. It's almost unheard of.
Yeah, for our listeners who may not be familiar with the term organic asset growth, essentially means it's growth that comes from within the company, not through acquisitions or mergers.
Right. It shows how well they're attracting and managing investments.
Exactly.
So the big question is, how are they pulling this off? What's the secret sauce fueling this financial rocket ship?
Well, according to the sources, there are a few key factors at play. One of the biggest is their success with ETFs, exchange-traded funds.
Right, ETFs. Didn't Larry Fink predict that fixed income ETFs specifically would explode in popularity?
He did, and guess what? They just crossed $1 trillion in assets.
Wow, so he called it.
He did, and it just goes to show their deep understanding of the market trends and investor behavior.
So they're not just riding the wave, they're anticipating it and, I guess, building the surfboard too.
Exactly. And this actually points to a larger trend that we see happening in the financial world. The lines between public and private markets are becoming increasingly blurred.
Okay, so for those of us who aren't finance gurus, can you explain what you mean by that? What's the difference between public and private markets, and why is that blurring important?
Sure. So think of it this way. Public markets are like your local coffee shop. Everyone knows the menu, the prices are transparent, and it's relatively easy to get in and out. Private markets, on the other hand, are more like an exclusive speakeasy. You need to know the right people. The deals are made behind closed doors, and it's not as easy to just walk in and out.
Okay, I like that analogy.
So as these lines are blurring, it creates both opportunities and challenges for investors.
So where does BlackRock fit into all of this?
BlackRock, with its sophisticated technology and data analysis capabilities, is essentially becoming the essential map for navigating this complex and increasingly blurry financial landscape.
So they're like the Google Maps of this new financial world.
Exactly. They're using their expertise to help investors find their way to identify opportunities in both the familiar public markets and the more exclusive realm of private investments.
So they're big, they're growing, and they're leading the charge in this shifting financial landscape. But let's get down to brass tacks. What does this all mean for someone listening right now? Why should they care about any of this?
That's a great question, and I think the key takeaway here is that by understanding the trends BlackRock is betting on, we can potentially identify opportunities or even risks for ourselves.
Okay, so give us an example. What's one trend that BlackRock is betting on that our listeners should be aware of?
Well, one big one is private credit. BlackRock is going all in on private credit, seeing it as a market that's ripe for a major transformation.
When you say private credit, you're talking about.
Basically, lending money to companies outside of traditional banking channels, it's often seen as riskier than conventional lending, but it can also be more lucrative.
Okay, so it's higher risk, higher reward kind of thing.
Exactly. And what BlackRock is betting on is that they can bring more transparency and liquidity to this traditionally opaque market, which could potentially revolutionize how private investments work.
So instead of just managing money, they're trying to reshape the entire financial system.
You could say that.
Wow. Okay, so that's private credit. What other major moves are they making?
Another interesting move is their focus on India. They're making a concerted effort to become a major player in India's rapidly growing financial market.
India. That's interesting. What's driving that move? Are they simply chasing higher returns, or is there something more to it?
It's likely a combination of factors. India has a huge and increasingly affluent population, and their economy is expanding rapidly. So there's definitely a lot of potential for growth there. But I think it also signals a broader shift in global capital and investment.
So BlackRock is essentially saying, hey, the future is here and it's in India.
In a way, yes. And for anyone listening, the question becomes, are you positioned to benefit from these shifts? And it's not just about geography either. BlackRock's influence goes way beyond just where the money's go.
Wait, their influence on corporate behavior. That's a whole other side of this, isn't it?
It is. It's huge. Think about it. They're managing trillions of dollars. That gives them serious leverage when it comes to the companies they invest in.
So they're not just managing money. They're influencing how these companies operate, even on a global scale.
Pretty much.
Hmm.
They're using their position to push for things like environmental sustainability, strong corporate governance, even social responsibility.
It's interesting to think about because on one hand, you've got this force for good, potentially pushing companies to be more sustainable, more ethical. But on the other hand, does this much concentrated power make anyone else a little uneasy?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's a debate, for sure. Some people say they're not doing enough while others say they're overstepping. So, yeah, it's a double-edged sword.
Do the sources give us any specific examples of how BlackRock is using this influence?
Yeah, actually, the earnings supplement talks about their stance on climate risk. They've been pretty vocal about urging companies to be more transparent about climate-related risks and to start transitioning to more sustainable practices.
So they're putting their money where their mouth is.
It's a process. And like we said, there are critics who say it's not enough or that it's not their place to even try.
Right, but the point is they're a major player
Mhm.
and their actions have a ripple effect.
Absolutely.
It makes their decision to focus on India even more interesting. I mean, we talked about the financial gains, but do you think there's maybe a desire there to shape corporate behavior in that market too?
It's definitely possible. I mean, India has its own unique set of challenges when it comes to things like sustainability and governance. BlackRock's presence there could mean more than just financial investment. It could be an attempt to influence those things as well.
It's like they're not just betting on the future of finance, they're trying to shape a different kind of corporate landscape.
And that's where their technology and data analysis come in.
Right, they're not just reading tea leaves here, they're analyzing massive amounts of data.
Exactly. They're using algorithms and tracking trends to anticipate future shifts and opportunities that most of us probably wouldn't even notice.
It's like having a crystal ball peering into the future of the global economy.
And while we don't have that crystal ball, this deep dive into their earnings report gives us a glimpse into their thought process.
So if BlackRock is going all in on private credit, betting big on India's growth, and using their influence to try and steer corporate behavior, what can the average person listening to this actually do with that information?
That's the question we all need to be asking ourselves, and it's one we're going to keep exploring as we wrap up our deep dive.
So we spent this deep dive talking about BlackRock. We've seen the numbers, we've talked about their influence, and it's easy to feel a little overwhelmed, right? Like, how do we even begin to wrap our heads around a company this massive?
Right, it's not like we're all going to wake up tomorrow and start managing trillions of dollars.
Exactly. But that doesn't mean we can't learn from what they're doing. This deep dive isn't about becoming BlackRock. It's about understanding the trends they're betting on and thinking about what those trends could mean for us.
Yeah, because whether we realize it or not, we're all part of this big financial ecosystem.
So let's bring it back down to earth for a minute. Their focus on private credit, for example. What can the average person actually do with that information?
Well, for starters, it's about being aware of the opportunities. I mean, if BlackRock is investing heavily in private credit, maybe it's worth learning more about. It could be a good time to explore those options for yourself.
So do your research talk to a financial advisor? See if it makes sense for your own portfolio?
Exactly. And it's not just about private credit. Either take their focus on India, for example.
Right, we talked about how that signals a potential shift in global investment.
Yeah. So maybe this is a good time to learn more about investing in that market. Or maybe it sparks an idea for a new business venture. The point is, BlackRock's moves can give us clues about where the world is headed, and we can use those clues to our advantage.
And what about their push for sustainable investing and corporate responsibility? That feels like something we can all get behind.
Absolutely. It shows that you don't need to be a Wall Street giant to make a difference with your investments. You can choose to support companies that align with your values, whether it's sustainability or social justice or something else entirely.
It's about putting your money where your mouth is, right?
Exactly. This deep dive into BlackRock's earnings wasn't just about understanding the numbers, but it was about using those numbers to think bigger, to ask ourselves, what kind of future are we creating with our money?
I think that's a great takeaway. So to wrap things up, what would you say is the one thing you want our listeners to remember from this deep dive?
I'd say the biggest takeaway is that the financial world is always changing. What BlackRock is doing today might be old news tomorrow. So the key is to stay informed, stay curious, and never stop asking what's next.
Well said. That's all the time we have for today's deep dive, but the conversation doesn't have to end here. Keep those questions coming, and we'll catch you next time.